Chaucer as a representative of his age. Literature mirrors life faithfully. Every age gets its own supreme artist who best expresses its tendencies, its aspirations, its hopes and fears, its joys and sorrows. Thus Pope is the mouthpiece of his age and Tennyson that of his own. Pope expresses the frivolity, the artificiality, the fashions and fads of the Queen Anne. Tennyson expresses the Victorian prudery, the Victorian faith in science, nationalism and increasing materialistic tendencies. Similarly, Chaucer is the mouthpiece of his age. He discards the old conventions of fantasy and realistically mirrors the social, economic and religious conditions of his age. Other contemporary poets have also done so, but their portrayals of the age are fragmentary. But Chaucer expresses his age not in fragments, rather as a whole. His depiction of his age is complete, comprehensive and all-inclusive. Chaucer expresses both the medieval and the Renaissance spirit of the times in their true perspectives. The very framework of his Canterbury Tales is realistic. Pilgrimages were very popular in the 14th century. They were often undertaken in groups, partly for the sake of company on the way and partly because of the dangers of the roads. One of the most popular shrines was that of Thomas à Becket at Canterbury, and in April, groups of pilgrims could be seen going in that direction. They laughed, talked and told merry tales, just in the manner of Chaucer's pilgrims. His characters are individuals as well as types. Through them Chaucer gives us a realistic picture of men and manners of the England of his times. Through his knight Chaucer reflects the fast-vanishing chivalry of the Middle Ages. He is a typical knight of the times and has fought in 15 mortal battles in the service of his lord. His son, the squire, represents the new and rising chivalry of the age. He is a lover and lusty youth and is all day lost in singing and flute playing. If he goes to battle, it is only in the hope of standing in his lady's grace. The 14th century witnessed the rise of a rich and prosperous merchant class. English trade was flourishing, and merchants were earning huge profits and consequently rising in importance in the life of the nation. For example, Chaucer's merchant is conscious of his own importance. He typifies the well-being of his class. Chaucer's carpenter, dyer, etc. represent the new power these commoners were getting in those days. Their wives were too conscious of their own importance in the life of the nation. Together with wealth, came a smashed extravagance in matters of dress. This love of display and fondness for bright colors is shown by several characters in the prologue. Chaucer's portrait of the Doctor of Physics is fairly representative of the theory and practice of medicine in his age. The science was primitive and was based on astrology. Chaucer's doctor is well grounded in astrology and prescribes only when the stars are in the ascendancy. It was this primitive science which remained helpless in the face of Black Death. The greatest evil of the age of Chaucer was the growing corruption in the church. This degender of the churchmen of his day is realistically represented by Chaucer through his religious characters. Chaucer took little interest in social or religious reform and never lashes out at the church like Wycliffe or Langland. Yet the portrait which he draws of the fat, pleasure-loving monk, the merry friar, that clever rogue, the pardoner who wanders about selling relics, show that he was alive to the shocking corruption that existed in the church of his times. There were only a few who, like Chaucer's parson, were still honest and pure and performed their duties faithfully. There was also a sort of minor renaissance at work in the 14th century England. The French and Italian contemporary writers influenced considerably the course of English literature and thought. Chaucer's portrait of the Clerk of Oxford is fairly representative of this new culture. He is an austere scholar who prefers 20 books of Aristotle's philosophy to colourful clothes and musical instruments. Though Chaucer holds the mirror to his times, yet his picture is incomplete in one respect. Chaucer was basically a court poet who wrote for the cultured people and refined society. He wrote for the court and nobility who did not wish to be disturbed by painful reminders of plagues, famines and popular discontent. Thus prologue contains very few references to these vital issues, and even they're in casual and jesting mood. As a matter of fact, Chaucer was humorist. He had a tolerant and forgiving temperament. He was not a social reformer but essentially a gifted poet. The characteristic tone of his poetry is that of the frank pleasure in the good things of life. Thus little touched by religious or social movements, he responded readily to the influences of Italian humanism, and it is through him that its free secular spirit expresses itself in English poetry. Chaucer in this sense may rightly be called the morning star of the Renaissance. All these illustrations explicitly show that Chaucer was the most perfect representative poet of his times. And therein lies his greatness.